A lot of promises in the mayor's State of the City address, but lucky for us, we have Executive Dean of Hofstra University, Larry Levy, here with us to unpack what the mayor's speech may mean, some of the implications of his promises. Larry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
What was your reaction? You watched the whole State of the City address. What did you think?
Well, I think that he clearly is trying to reinsert himself into the national conversation of the Democrats' transition from being somewhat moderate under Bill Clinton, even Barack Obama, to a much more progressive left-wing vision.
That's right. We know he's going to be taking this progressive show on the road.
He's going to go on the road. And, you know, the problem with taking these shows on the road, and I'm not so cynical as to think that the mayor of New York or the governor of New York shouldn't be out promoting the state and promoting what they're doing. But the key is implementation, making it work. Because it's one thing to talk about great, grandiose programs. It's another thing to make them work for the people who you pretend to champion. And that's something that we're going to have to watch very carefully. The other thing is being able to pay for them. Now, New York, the New York economy is unreal right now. It's on fire. It could absorb almost anything. But individual sectors, individual businesses, for example, that now have to provide 2 weeks, great idea to make sure everyone gets a vacation, but can these businesses sustain it? And then what happens when the party's over, when the economy cools down and we face ultimately again another recession? Will these just be cut to be able to just take care of absolute necessities, and these folks who get their hopes up and their dreams up lose them? Real careful. It needs a lot of thought and needs a lot of work to implement.
And talking about the economy and money, top of mind for a lot of people, the MTA, he didn't directly name Governor Cuomo. He mentioned Albany,
right,
and, you know, wanting to fix the subways here. You know, what did you think of that mention there?
Well, it took him 4 pages to get to Donald Trump, and he never did mention Andrew Cuomo. But he clearly shifted the responsibility, and if you want to infer the blame for the problems with the subways, onto Albany and the governor. But he was a little reticent about picking a particular solution for it. He did say congestion pricing is coming along. The proposals are getting better.
But he mentioned that millionaires tax again.
Millionaires tax is out there. That's, you know, that's progressive conservatism already. It's something that almost everybody talks about. But, you know, he also recognizes that unlike being able to sign an executive order as he did for, I guess this was a landlord, to be tougher on landlords. There are things he cannot do without Albany's support. And it sounded like he was being just a little bit more circumspect to make it a little easier to deal with the folks up there.
Now, one thing that would bring money into the state, legalizing marijuana. He's been hesitant to go for it in the past, but he was talking about it.
Right. He made a joke, I think, without realizing it. He wants the grassroots to be doing this. And again, you know, you can mandate anything you want, but sometimes economies have a life of their own. And it may be that a bunch of small businesses get an opportunity, make sure that, you know, minority and women-owned businesses get a chance to do this. But ultimately, big business is going to come in. They're going to make a play. It was interesting, though, he tried to position himself as a fighter against big business and did not mention at all his support for subsidies for Amazon. So, you know, these speeches tend to be a mix of hype and you know, true accomplishment. And sometimes it's about highlighting what you have accomplished and running away from what you haven't. That was an example of giving short shrift to something that you're getting hammered on.
Now, I know he also mentioned, too, with the homeless, you know, they moved more than 2,000 homeless New Yorkers off the streets, closed more than 180 shelters that didn't meet the standards. You know, homeless, it's a real issue in New York City. I walk along 10th Avenue here. I see a ton of homeless folks still out there on the street.
Right. And, you know, nothing I said should be taken that de Blasio doesn't have a long list of accomplishments. I think making a dent in the homeless population is important. Vision Zero is an amazing accomplishment. Somehow bringing crime down even lower than Bloomberg did, which seemed amazing that he could bring it down lower than Giuliani, is a true accomplishment. The economy of New York and the diversity of people that make that happen is amazing and something to be proud of, and it's been on his watch. But there have been failures. There have been unfinished business. The New York Housing Authority, he spent 2 lines on, essentially, as a problem. And there are other places as well that he didn't talk much about, or he talked about more obliquely than his opponents would probably want him to do.
And before we let you go,
yeah.
we will let you go at some point, I promise. The Healthcare for All announcement, what did you make of that?
Well, it's not new in the sense that anybody can now get health care from New York City through its clinics and its hospitals. But in my center, we do a lot of work in the public health sector. And I can tell you that communication, making sure that potential patients get the word, making sure that they can get to the clinics, making sure that there is follow-up is sometimes as important as the treatment. So I'm not as cynical about that proposal as some of his critics are.
And what do you make of the paid time off? How's this going to affect small businesses who now have to provide this for their employees?
Well, really small businesses don't have to provide it. I think up to 5 employees are exempt. But again, it's a matter of whether this can work for particular sectors. Again, it's not going to hurt the city at large. The economy, as I said before, is on fire. But the reality is that there are certain businesses that are struggling now, just absorbing the $15 an hour wage. So, and it was also telling that he did not consult with the so-called business community in New York on this. Maybe he was afraid that they would leak it and take his fire away from him. But, you got to talk, even if you're making them to be the enemy with the class warfare, of the money being in the wrong hands. You still got to talk to the people who create the jobs and who have to execute to make sure that maybe there wasn't a better way to do this. So we'll see how this works out, because if he doesn't execute and a year or 2 from now these programs don't work out because they weren't thought through properly, if he doesn't do that, then instead of getting a lot of credit, he's going to get a lot of blame.
Okay. Larry Levy, we thank you so much. We
You're
could
welcome.
go on all day, but
yeah, we're
going to wrap it up. We thank you for being here. Appreciate it.